Good morning. Hi, hello. So, we have this morning Natalie, woo! And we have Lyndon and Kiana. This is our very humble, intimate situation. So, if you would like, you can stand with us now and sing along. All the songs are songs we've done before this week, so just feel free to chime in. This first one's called Heavy. Figure out why. Take a trip to your dark side. Go on and have a good cry. We're all lonely. We're all lonely together. I want to see your sadness. I want to share your sin. I want to be your blood. I want to be let in. Don't you just don't be lost. Want to be together. Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister? Only way to lose that fearful feeling, replace it with love that's healing. Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister? What's heavy? What? So this one's called Redemption, and it's a fairly new one because we just started doing this one for Pride Month. But I really like this song. It's very simple, and the chorus says, "Just set me free." And I don't know what kind of week y'all have had, but I kind of feel like I just need to be set free from not just one thing, not just two things, but from several things. So if that's you this morning, don't be shy. You can close your eyes as you do it. Just sing out that chorus with us and declare freedom over your life and your body and your family and those you care about. It's not in tune yet, so we're going to keep talking. Set me free from the tuning of this guitar, Jesus. It's fun. Thank you, Lyndon. I appreciate you being my human tuner. We're just gonna roll with it, it's fine. On this day, they'll say, her guitar wasn't in tune, but she was in the spirit. It's fine. It's all good. Yep, just ignore it, it's fine. How many hours I've known, and all of my wounds are the cost of laying low. I demand they turn to home. Just set me free. Just set me free. As it takes its hold, and it won't let you go. I'm reminded of the cold and how it's taken so much from me. Are you worthy of being saved? Are your fears and insecurities? Lord, just set me free. Just set me free. Just set me free.
feel this way every day. I don't have enough hands because I have a baby. Trying to do things like wash dishes with one hand doesn't work. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Thanks, Jarrett. Good morning. It's lovely to see you. We are having Sunday social after church, so if you like hanging out, we're going to Trophy Fish today. It's like 1 block that way on the corner on Central. They have good beer. They have some fake, what is like a non-alcoholic mocktail. They're very cute. They also have food, and Gianna, who is our band leader, who's great, introduced me to their, they have this fancy corn. She was like, this is the best corn I've ever eaten in my life. And I was like, that seems like you're overselling it. No, it's very good. It's very good. So highly recommend. We will be there right after service. We have to break everything down here, but go on over, and I'll be there probably around noon. And you can go to diff.church. That is our little hub where we connect with you. You can tell us what you're praying about. You can donate. You can sign up to volunteer. If you are a volunteer, you get a very cool free Diff Church t-shirt. And I don't know if any of you noticed, this is kind of a big deal because our stuff center is back. We had it for a total of 3 weeks when we started Different Church, and then the world shut down. And so we have not had anything out for like a year. Thanks, COVID. But now we have t-shirts. So we even have one left of the very first t-shirt that we ever made. I know. It's a small, so it's not going to fit me, so someone else has to take it. And the other announcement is we have groups going on right now. We have a small summer session. So we have 5 weeks left of groups. There's a Tampa in-person group, a St. Pete in-person group, and a Zoom virtual group. So if you would like to be involved in one of those, you can go to diff.church and sign up. You don't have to come to every single one. You can come as you're able, and there's no prep required on your part. So you're welcome. You just show up and make friends and have conversation. Now, I'm very excited about today. I've been telling people I'm excited about today because we are talking about what is truth? And you're going to know everything you need to know about truth in the next 20 minutes. You'll be set up for the rest of your life. You'll never have any questions again, ever. And next week, we're also going to talk about what is truth. So this week is what is truth. Next week, we're going to talk about a phrase that you have perhaps been beaten to death with by someone in the church called speaking the truth in love. And if you want to dive into this topic more, there's a very great book called Love Matters More, How Fighting to Be Right Keeps Us from Loving Like Jesus. It's written by Jared Bias. If you are a book reader, you can dive into that. Otherwise, just listen to me because I'm going to tell you what he says in the book. So this morning we're going to ask 2 questions. First of all, what is truth? And second of all, can we access absolute truth? So first I'm going to go, can we access absolute truth? And the answer is no. Now, nobody freak out, okay? Stick with me. I didn't say there is no absolute truth. I just said we can't access it. We are finite human beings, so there is no way that you can access all truth. It's impossible. Even when we understand something perfectly, there's a chance that we're wrong. Or more likely, we just don't have a full understanding of things. So here's an example. In medieval times, they had a very popular, catchy phrase that said this: a prodigy as rare upon the earth as a black swan. It wasn't very catchy. They were not very catchy with their phrases back then. A prodigy as rare on the earth as a black swan. That's the modern equivalent of saying when pigs fly. Why? Because it didn't exist. It couldn't exist. No one in recorded history had ever observed a black swan. Everyone was convinced that they did not exist. And the only logical conclusion was there are no such things as black swans. And it was nonsense. If you were like, I believe that black swans exist, they would be like, you're literally saying like a pig could fly in the sky. You're out of your mind. However, black swans do exist. Someone discovered them and was like, I found a black swan. Everyone was like, you're this guy. Somebody commit him to an institution. He's saying something exists that does. So they brought a pair back to England. And like, look, black swans. For centuries, it had been absolutely true that black swans did not exist. And then it was like the absolute gospel truth. And then they existed. This may seem like a ridiculous example. This like seriously blew some people's minds. Okay? I'm not saying that absolute truth doesn't exist. I'm just saying that we're finite and we can't access truth absolutely. And it's interesting, and access absolute truth almost always all who possess it. They're like, oh, the absolute truth is what I'm telling you. So if you don't agree with me, then you're just not believing the truth. And, of course, since we don't have access to absolute truth, only God does, I'm sure you know the barbarity of what our culture is going to turn into. Okay? There will be no morality. The age of the Antichrist has been ushered in. People will be having sex in broad daylight in a Target. Children who are 5 years old will be smoking weed, every child. Like, basically just watch Mad Max Fury Road. Like, this is going to be the life now. Since we don't have access to absolute truth, there's no hope. We're doomed. The apocalypse is coming tomorrow. Or maybe that's just what we were told would happen. Like, the church tends to rely very heavily on scare tactics where truth is involved. Is it true that if we don't have access to absolute truth, that we're just going to float hopelessly in a world of moral relativism and where nothing is right or wrong and everything goes no matter what? No. That's ridiculous. Okay? Richard Rorty, who's an influential, postmodern philosopher, he's high on the list of people you would be warned about reading, lest you lose your faith. He, has dedicated his life to studying philosophy and relativism, and even he thinks it's ridiculous. He says this: relativism is the view that every belief on a certain topic, or perhaps about any topic, is as good as every other. Nobody actually holds this belief. No one holds this view. So relativism is this idea that right and wrong depend on the individual. Sounds to me like something a perfectionist made up. Like, if we're not perfect, we don't have anything. That's essentially what we're saying when we make statements like, if we don't have access to absolute truth, then anything goes. No, it doesn't. Even if you believe that right and wrong depends on the individual, I guarantee you, if I just come up to you in Trophy Fish and punch you in the face, you're going to be like, I'm sorry. That was wrong. Well, how do you know it wasn't wrong for me? Okay? It's ridiculous to think that we're going to end up in this world where every human is going to do what they think is right, and we're just going to end up murdering each other, and nothing will ever be right again, and the world is going to hell in a handbasket. This fear that that's been put on us from people that are like, well, you have to know the truth. And if you don't, I don't know what's going to happen to you. I'll pray for you. We want to get to absolute truth because it gives us this sense of certainty and safety. But just because we really want unicorns to exist doesn't mean they do. Unless, of course, they're like black swans and they do exist and I just don't know yet. I hope. I hope they exist. But just because we want the Bible to explain everything there is to know about God and faith doesn't mean that it does. We will never get the whole truth about everything. And certainly not in our lifetimes. But that doesn't mean we just give up on truth entirely. If we can't know everything, then we must not know anything. No. No. Our lives are filled with truths that we rely on every single day. And it's just that some truths, especially the really important ones about God and faith and relationships, they're not as clean or as clear as we want them to be. Now, the dictionary tries to help us out. The dictionary is like, you want to know what truth is? I'll tell you. This is truth. The true or actual state of the matter. So helpful. So in defining truth, we use the word true, which we already don't know what that means. So do we have, okay, we don't know what that means, but then it says the true or actual state of the matter. Well, do we have access to what is actual? What do you even mean by actual? And what do we mean by state? This is how you dive down philosophical rabbit holes and emerge 20 years later with crazy eyes and a scraggly gray beard. And you're like, there is no spoon. There's only the idea of a spoon. So, okay, we're going to try to talk about truth in a more meaningful and helpful way. There are 3 different senses of truth. There's fact truth, meaning truth, and wisdom truth. Bless you. Fact truth is where we typically start. It's the most basic understanding we have. It's the objective conclusions we come to about the world. Like, facts are what would be true about the world even if we were dead. We're not here. Facts still exist, right? Like the sun is still there even if I'm dead. Facts is what exists out there. But how do we grasp these things that are objective fact truths about the world? We have come up with two great methods. One is logical argument, and the other is the scientific method. And you can be like, well, those aren't perfect. Yes. We already talked about how we're not going to be perfectionistic, okay? We're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, they're not perfect, but they have helped us quite a bit. Like, the method has led us to smartphones. Robot-assisted surgery, air travel. Like, I'd say we're doing pretty great with logical argument and the scientific method. Both of those processes have rules in place to try to keep us on the right path so that we don't just let our opinions overtake everything and we're like, well, that doesn't feel right. Well, the scientific method, like, you have to replicate, right? It has to be observable and replicatable and et cetera, et cetera. The logical argument, you have all these logical fallacies. You can't be like, well, if this is true, then this is true. Well, no, you have to prove it. You have to argue. But what about alternative facts? To use a popular phrase that went around, or still going around, I think alternative facts come from one of three things. One, we don't want to do the hard work of applying the laws of logic and the scientific method to whatever we are presented with. Two, we don't have the skills to apply logic or the scientific method to what we are presented with. Or three, we are in some type of power, usually political or even church power, and we have very little accountability or motive for telling the truth because then our agenda will fall apart. Sadly, like, you may think I'm being political. I am talking about the church here. We talk about scare tactics that the church uses. No, we don't want to use logic and the scientific method, not when it comes to creation versus evolution, because you are not speaking the truth. You're going straight to hell. That might be an exaggeration, but some churches say things like this. When it comes to fact truths, like what is water made of, we can't just rely on our senses, our intuition, right? We have to place these things into a process that we've honed and developed for thousands of years and then trust the process because the process has given us some great results. But laws of logic and science are really great. They can't answer questions of morality. They can't answer questions of religion. They can't answer questions of what it means to experience life as a human. They can answer how the world works, but it can't tell you what it means to live life well. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks said, science takes things apart to see how they work. Religion puts things together to see what it means. Which brings us to our second type of truth, meaning truth. G.K. Chesterton, who's a famous writer, he said, fairy tales are more than true. Not because they tell us dragons exist, they don't, but because they tell us dragons can be beaten. The scientific method will never produce a story where dragons exist, because they don't exist. But humans are more complex than that. We can understand that dragons can be a stand-in for something. Could be a stand-in for our fear, our hurdles, our challenges, or it could be just a really cool part of a video game. I have a dragon tattooed on my leg. It's from a video game. Nerd alert. Okay, we're all equipped with tools to make meaning out of facts. So let's imagine like a 3-car pileup happens. There's 3 people, they're all in this accident. The first person is like, well, dang, this morning I was in a hurry. I did not use my favorite coffee cup because it was dirty. I used a different cup, and this is why the accident happened. He's a little superstitious. And if you think that's crazy, what about people who wear something specific every time their sports team plays? He's like, this coffee mug, I changed up my routine. This is why this happened. The next person is like, I have been saving my whole life to buy this really nice car, and now this car is wrecked and everything is ruined. Like, I'm never going to be able to afford this car again. Life is terrible. And And the third person was not in a hurry, was not going to work, was just out for a drive, has plenty of insurance to cover the damages, is feeling so positive. She's just so thankful that no one was hurt. That's three different interpretations of the same exact event. The facts stayed the same. There's an accident with 3 cars. But what it means to each person is very different. And things get really complicated when we start talking about our relationships with other people. Like when we think about meaning, we have to ask, what was the original communicator intending to mean? It would be kind of ridiculous to be like, what did this accident intend to mean? But if you're talking to your partner, it might be very important to know what they intended to mean when they say something to you. And what about when it comes to the Bible? When we ask, what does it mean, we're asking 2 questions. What did the person who originally put pen to paper mean? What did they intend to mean? And what does this mean now to me and my culture? And our relationship with the Bible tends to be a two-way street. We want to understand what the author was intending to communicate, but we also want it to communicate something significant to us in our community of faith right now. Because if it doesn't communicate something to us, then why are we reading it? If we understand the intention, but it doesn't communicate anything significant to us right now, then it's irrelevant. If we make it significant without regard to the original intention, it's groundless. We can't just make things mean whatever we want them to mean, but that also doesn't mean that things can only mean one thing. The task of respecting the author's intentions, while also finding ways to integrate the Bible into our lives in a way that's relevant and significant and has value, is really messy, and that's why we don't do it. Because it's really hard. Like, relationships are not always easy, right? Does anyone have a relationship that's like super, super easy and you've never had any problems? Jared's lying. Not bound by rules, but by principles. Yes, I shall never yell at my partner. I will always agree with my partner. Well, that sounds like a terrible relationship. And that's also not how humans work, so you're lying. It's not about, relationships should not be bound by authority, but by mutual respect. So it's not about, when we think about the Bible, it's not about this is the only right interpretation that you can possibly ever believe, and if you don't believe this, then off with your head. That might be dramatic. But it's not about right or wrong interpretations. It's about better or worse interpretations, helpful or unhelpful interpretations, because clearly there have been some pretty bad interpretations of Scripture. Throughout history, there have been really bad interpretations of Scripture, and also there have been really, really great interpretations of Scripture, things that are life-affirming, things that help us and move us forward and move us closer to God. So we don't just give up because there could be multiple meanings. It's messy. We have to put a little work into it. And how do you arrive on better or worse? Right? Because I could be like, this is what this means to me. And that might be you might think that's a terrible interpretation. But is there a method? How can we know that what we're arriving on is a better interpretation instead of a worse interpretation? And this brings us to our last kind of truth, which is wisdom truth. Here's a popular saying you may have heard. Knowledge is knowing tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. Wisdom truth hardly gets talked about in our culture, but it is the most talked about kind of truth in history, and certainly in the Bible. It's also the most important kind of truth for our everyday lives. Wisdom's not about beliefs in our head, but about a life well lived. Here's another way of saying this. Facts result in knowledge, and meaning results in understanding. Wisdom is about figuring out how to navigate the practical reality of life and what it means to be human. Here are some wonderful various wisdom sayings. You will never fulfill your destiny until you let go of the illusion of control. It's pretty wise. Here's another one. When the path you walk always leads back to yourself, you never get anywhere. It's pretty wise. Your mind is like water. When it is agitated, it becomes difficult to see. But if you allow it to settle, the answer will become clear. Which is pretty wise, right? These are great wisdom sayings from various faith traditions. They're from Kung Fu Panda, which is a great movie. I love that movie. Wisdom sayings are things that share good advice about life well lived, but also they resist our urge to turn them into rules. Wisdom sayings often require us to live life for a while before we really understand what it's about, which is exactly what happens in Kung Fu Panda. No spoilers. Wisdom comes when we enact meaning under the right circumstances, at the right time, in the right way. When I can already hear the complaints, what's to stop us from being like everyone else in the world and just assigning meaning and wisdom however we please and just, moral relativism is going to take over again? No. Fact truth is guided by the laws of logic and the laws of science. Meaning truth is guided by intention and significance. But what about wisdom truth? What allows us to say yes or no to certain definitions of a life well lived? What's our standard? What makes the Christian tradition different, maybe, than Stoicism or Buddhism or any other tradition? This is perhaps a too simple and too complex response to that. A life of love patterned after Jesus. This is where we bridge the gap between truth and love. This is when we learn why love matters more than fighting to be right all the time. The Christian understanding of wisdom is where truth and love actually put down their weapons. And no, they don't just become friends, but they become the same thing. Because the highest form of truth is love. Facts are what would be true if we were dead. Meaning is this spark of connection between each other and the world. And wisdom truth is personal because it cannot be true if you are dead, because it's a question of whether you personally are living the truth well. Which is why any form of Christianity that sells you certainty is just a get-rich-quick scheme. It robs us of wisdom and it robs us of courage. Because the form of Christianity that tells us there's black and white answers to everything, this is how you love someone well, it completely ignores the messiness of relationships with people. Wisdom's not about words, it's how you live. 1 John 3:18 says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in what? Truth." It takes wisdom to love well. It takes action. Like in the Bible, there's no tension between truth and love. Because the highest form of truth is wisdom, and the highest form of wisdom is love. And according to the Bible, truth is love, because God is truth and God is love. And there's no distinction between those. Jesus is about the way you live your life and not the facts in your head. And I think if we are people of faith, if we call ourselves Christians, what we mean by wisdom and what we mean by love is shaped by Jesus. Speaking the truth in love, that looks different if you spend your life pursuing wisdom, rather than just making sure you get the facts right. Does that mean the facts don't matter? Of course they do. Don't jump on the perfectionist bandwagon. It's not all or nothing. We live with facts. The question is, how can we go beyond facts to find love and walk in wisdom daily? The question is, how do I love someone well in this situation? And then in my next interaction with another person, how do I love that person well too? I think of, this is part of next week's message, but you're getting a preview. Like, if I have a hard day, what I really want is to watch some trash TV and like eat so many snacks and go to bed early. Like, give me a giant bucket of popcorn and probably a brownie and like MasterChef. So good. I will just feel amazing if someone gives me that opportunity. Do you think my baby Nova would feel loved if she's like upset and I'm like, here's MasterChef and a bowl of popcorn. No, wisdom is not giving her that. Wisdom is saying, actually what you need is some snuggles and also maybe bed early, but like something. Wisdom is saying, how do I apply what I know about this relationship and this person right now to love well? Which is why if you're ever beating someone up with facts, you are not living the truth. I say you, I'm talking to myself too. Plenty of times in my life I've been like, well, this is what's right. Let me just tell you, because I have the handle on what is absolute truth, okay? And you need to fall in line. I'm like a little nicer when I say it, but we've all been there. Or we've all been in the place where maybe we actually did keep our mouth shut. Praise. But inside, we're like, I didn't know that about that person. Wisdom truth is about being in relationship with people no matter what the facts say. And how do we love each other well? So we have 2 more songs. So I invite you to stand and we're going to sing together. And then I'll come back and give a benediction. And maybe just reflect as we sing on what kind of truth has been most meaningful in your life so far. And how can we move from facts to wisdom?
Oh, the vapor of it all. It's a chasing of the wind, the powers of the earth, so pale and thin. We will set our hearts on you again. Heaven downs the hearts of men. We can feel it from within, the beauty of it all. A mystery, swelling of a voice, a rising sea. Holy, you, oh God, are holy. Dream wonderful and holy. Kings become fools for you, kingdoms to ruins for you. Vapor finds ground in you, music finds sound in you. Everything rising, everything rising, everything rising, singing, like dawn, like waves, like sunlight, bring this world to life. Like rain, like breath, like springtime, bring this world to All right, so this is the last song, and I really like this song a lot. This song carries with me from the church I went to before this one, is when I was introduced to Stephanie Gretzinger and Amanda Cook. And if you don't know who they are, they're best friends in real life, which is amazing. I say in real life like they're actresses or something. They're best friends. And yeah, this song, I really like it because it just reminds me of like, every time I forget, like, the bottom line is that God is love and that God loves me and that God loves all of us. Like, this song is really great because it just reminds me like how big God's love is. Every time I try to put love in a box, God's love in a box, or every time like someone else around me tries to put God's love in a box, like God can't do that because that person is not lovable or whatever it is. Like, I like this song because it just reminds me that that's not true, because God's love is extravagant and it doesn't make sense at all why God would be so loving and open and accepting, like, because people aren't like that. It's hard to conceive that that can be real, but it is. So, yeah, just taste on that in your mind for a moment. You were living before times began. You gave your love freely, withholding nothing. Jesus, my Jesus, doesn't make sense. I'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you go to say you love us.
I love that song. It's extravagant how much I love that song. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I know this is like the best church experience you've ever had in your life. Just kidding. We are going to Trophy Fish after, so if you would like to come hang out, please do. We're going to tear some things down here first, put everything away so the opera can go back to being an opera instead of pretending to be a church on Sunday mornings. We're going to do a benediction, which is like a cross between a blessing and a prayer. We like to do those at the end and send you out for your week. So let's pray together. Spirit of the living God, when words spoken to ourselves, each other, and our planet home are threaded with language of power over, undo the stitching. When we feel overwhelmed by the enormity of world suffering, may we remember to be where we are. These people, this community, this heart in this chest, this ground under these feet. Holy God, don't let us fritter our lives and our shared resources away on that which only bolsters our egos. God's power is found in co-creating with what's on hand. A shared meal, a safe place to stay, a new way to celebrate. When God is among us, scarcity no longer reigns. Thanks be to God, the source of our abundance. Amen. Thank you for being here. Happy Sunday. And you definitely don't want to miss next week, because I think it's pretty great. Have a great day.
Yes, you sure did. Hey, I like your glasses. I went across the street and just while we were on break, bought some sunglasses.